chosen one. This morning you woke up, and the first thing you did was check. You reached for your phone before your feet touched the floor. You scrolled through notifications, messages, headlines, scanning the outside world for some sign that today would be different. But the answer you've been looking for is not on that screen. It has never been on that screen. And if you are hearing this right now, it is because something inside you already knows that. Not your mind. Your mind is still arguing. Your spirit stopped you here because it recognized a frequency it has been waiting to hear. So before you check anything else today, check within. That is where the signal is. Let me describe your morning, and you tell me if I'm wrong. You opened your eyes. For a half second, maybe less, there was stillness, just you, the ceiling, the quiet. And then the reflex kicked in. Hand to phone. Screen on, notifications, emails, social media. Within 90 seconds of being alive today, you had already given your attention to a dozen things that have nothing to do with who you actually are. And by the time you put the phone down, if you put it down, something had already shifted. Not dramatically, subtly, a slight heaviness, a quiet deflation. You had not even started your day and you already felt behind. That is not a small thing. That is the pattern that has been running your life, not the big crises those you handle. It is this invisible bleed, this slow leak of energy that happens before you are even conscious enough to notice it. You wake up and immediately hand the microphone to the world. You let other people's posts tell you what success looks like. You let unanswered messages decide your mood. You let breaking news set the emotional temperature for your next 12 hours. And then you spend the rest of the day wondering why you feel drained when you have barely done anything. Here is the truth no one is telling you. You are not exhausted because you are doing too much. You are exhausted because you have been living out of alignment for so long that you forgot what alignment feels like. There is a difference between being tired from building and being tired from leaking. Builders rest and recover. Leakers rest and wake up still empty. And you have been leaking, not because you are weak, because no one taught you where the valves are, but something is different today. And I need you to pay attention to what that something is. There has been a restlessness in you lately, not anxiety, something beneath anxiety. A low hum, a feeling that something is about to shift, but you cannot name it. You have felt it for days, maybe weeks. It shows up at odd times in the shower, driving alone, lying awake at 2 a.m., staring at the ceiling. Your life has not changed yet, but something in your perception is changing. You are starting to see things you used to ignore. You are starting to question patterns you used to accept. That is not random. That is the signal. In Scripture, there is a concept that most people rush past. In 1 Kings 19, Elijah is on a mountain waiting for God. And a great wind comes, but God is not in the wind. And an earthquake comes, but God is not in the earthquake. And fire comes, but God is not in the fire. And then a still small voice. The Hebrew phrase is kol demamadaka, a thin whisper of silence. God did not show up in the spectacle. He showed up in the quiet. And Elijah almost missed it because he was looking for something loud. You have been looking for something loud, a sign, a miracle, a sudden change. But the signal has been whispering the whole time underneath your scroll, underneath your busyness, underneath the noise you fill your life with, so you do not have to sit in the quiet and hear what your spirit has been trying to say. The signal is not telling you that something is wrong. The signal is telling you that you have outgrown the container you have been living in. Your spirit has expanded past the edges of the life you built when you were smaller. And now, the old life feels tight, not because it is bad, but because it is no longer the right size for who you are becoming. That restlessness, that unnamed feeling, that 2 a.m. wakefulness, it is not a problem to solve. It is an invitation to notice, to stop checking the outside and start checking within. Because what you find inside when you are finally still enough to look is not emptiness. It is a blueprint, and someone has been drafting that blueprint long before you knew to look for it. But the signal only matters if you recognize it, and recognizing it requires a shift from seeing yourself as someone things happen to into someone being built for a purpose. That shift is not motivational, it is architectural, and it begins now. Let me ask you something, and I need you to answer honestly, not out loud, just to yourself. When was the last time you made a decision before something forced you to, not a reaction, not a scramble, a deliberate, unprovoked choice about the direction of your own life? If you have to think about it for more than 5 seconds, that tells you everything. You have been living in response mode, and response mode will keep you alive, but it will never let you build. Here is what response mode looks like from the inside. Your alarm goes off and you react. Email comes in and you react. Someone's mood shifts and you adjust. A bill arrives and you panic. A friend cancels and you spiral. By the end of the day, you have made 100 micro movements, but none of them were yours. Every single one was dictated by something outside of you. You were not navigating, you were being navigated. You were the ball in someone else's pinball machine, bouncing off bumpers. You did not place scoring points for a game you did not design. And the most painful part is not the exhaustion, it is the invisibility. Because when you live in reaction, nobody sees you. They see your labor. They see your availability. They see your willingness to adjust. But they do not see you, the actual person, underneath the performance. And after a while, you stop seeing yourself too. You become so good at reading what everyone else needs that you forget you are allowed to need something. You become so fluent in everyone else's language that you forget your own. That is the old identity. That is the frame you have been operating from, not because you chose it, but because survival demanded it. And it worked. It kept you going through seasons that would have broken someone else. I am not dismissing it. I am telling you it has expired. The survival frame got you here. But it cannot take you where you are going, and if you try to carry it into the next season, it will become the very thing that holds you back. So here is the shift. You are not a person things happen to. You are a person being built for a purpose. And there is a difference between those two identities that changes everything. One waits, the other designs, one absorbs, the other selects. One says, "Why is this happening to me?" The other says, "What is this building in me?" Same circumstances, completely different posture. The architect does not curse the raw materials scattered across the construction site. The architect sees structure where others see chaos. Brick, steel, dust, noise that is not destruction. That is a build in progress. And your life right now, the mess of it, the unfinished edges, the things that feel broken, they are not evidence that you failed. They are materials. And someone has been arranging them with precision you have not yet recognized. In Jeremiah 1:5, God says something that most people read too fast. "Before I formed you in the womb, I knew you." The word "knew" there in Hebrew, it is yada. And yada does not mean casual awareness. It does not mean God glanced at a list and saw your name. Yada is the deepest form of knowing in the Hebrew language. It means intimate knowledge, the kind a craftsman has of the piece they are shaping with their own hands. It means God did not just know about you. He knew you the way a sculptor knows the grain of the stone, every line, every curve, every fracture that would become a feature, not a flaw. And here is what that means for you today. Your design existed before your circumstances did. The blueprint came before the weather. And weather changes, economies shift, relationships end, doors close, plans collapse, but architecture remains. You are not your season. You are the structure that stands through every season, and the one who drew the blueprint is not finished. He is still building. The dust and noise in your life right now are not signs of collapse. They are signs of construction. Chosen one. I need you to sit with this for a moment, because your entire relationship with difficulty is about to change. You have been asking God to remove the hard things. But what if the hard things are load-bearing walls? What if the pressure you want to escape is the very thing forming your capacity to hold what is coming? An architect does not design a skyscraper to avoid wind. They design it to absorb wind and remain standing. The flexibility is intentional, the sway is engineered, and you have been swaying, but you have not fallen. That is not luck. That is design. So stop reading your life like a tragedy and start reading it like a blueprint. The job that did not work out, that was not rejection, it was redirection to a foundation that can hold more weight. The relationship that ended, that was not abandonment, it was clearing the site. The season of silence, that was not God ignoring you, it was the architect working on a part of the structure you cannot see yet, because it is underground. Foundations are always underground, they are always invisible, and they are always built in silence. But here is what the architect knows that the victim does not. Silence is not emptiness. Silence is where the deepest work happens. And that is exactly where we need to go next, into the silence itself, not to escape it, but to understand what it has been building in you all along. Silence has been sitting with you for longer than you realize. Not the absence of noise. Your life is full of noise. I mean the deeper silence, the one underneath. The silence where prayers felt like they hit the ceiling and came back down. The silence where you asked for direction and heard nothing. The silence that made you wonder if you had been forgotten. You were not forgotten. That silence was not empty. It was load-bearing. And before you can build anything new, you need to understand what it was carrying. But first, let me show you something about yourself that you have not named yet. You do not have an energy problem. You have a leaking problem. Your tank is not small, it is punctured. And the punctures are so familiar that you stopped noticing them. Let me name a few. You check your phone 70-80 times a day, not because you need information, but because stillness makes you uncomfortable. You mentally replay conversations that ended 3 days ago, editing your lines as if you could go back and re-deliver them. You worry about things that have not happened and may never happen, spending real energy on fictional scenarios. You explain yourself to people who did not ask for an explanation. You say yes when everything in your body is saying no. Each one of those is a puncture. Each one is a place where your energy exits without returning anything. And here is why this matters right now. The signal you recognized in your spirit, the shift from reaction to architecture, those require energy to sustain. Insight without energy becomes regret. You understand what needs to change, but you are too drained to change it. And then you blame yourself for lacking discipline, when the real issue is that you have been pouring from a container with holes in the bottom. No amount of motivation fixes a structural leak. So the first tactic is not action, it is retrieval. You have to get your energy back before you spend it on anything new. And the tool for retrieval is the one thing your life has been starving for: deliberate silence. Not silence as absence, silence as reclamation. You are not withdrawing from the world. You are closing the valves so the reservoir can fill. Picture a lake with 10 streams flowing out and only one flowing in. That lake will dry up no matter how deep it is. Silence is you shutting 9 of those streams temporarily, strategically, so the water level can rise again. In Psalm 46:10, there is a line most people have on a coffee mug but have never actually practiced. Be still and know that I am God. The word for be still in Hebrew is rafa. And rafa does not mean sit quietly. It does not mean meditate. The root meaning is to release your grip, to let go, to stop clutching. God is not telling you to be quiet. He is telling you to open your hands. Drop the need to control the outcome. Drop the compulsion to fix everything before sundown. Drop the addiction to being needed by everyone all the time. When you release your grip, energy that was being spent on holding everything together suddenly flows back to you. Rafa is not passivity. It is the most aggressive form of trust, telling God, I will stop white-knuckling this so you can actually work. Now here is what this looks like in practice. Tomorrow morning, the first 15 minutes belong to you. No phone, no headlines, no one else's voice in your head. Just you and the quiet. Sit with yourself. You do not have to pray anything specific. Just listen. If you hear nothing good, you are retraining the muscle. Most people cannot tolerate 15 minutes of silence because they have not practiced it in years. The discomfort you feel is not a sign that something is wrong. It is a sign that something is healing. During the day, every time you reach for your phone, out of restlessness, not necessity, restlessness, pause for 5 seconds. Ask one question. What am I looking for out there that I cannot find in here? You do not need to answer it. The question itself is the retrieval. It interrupts the leak. 5 seconds. One question. That is all. And at night, before you sleep, write one sentence. Just one. Answer this. Where did my energy go today? Do not judge the answer. Just notice. You are learning to see the flow, and once you see it, you can redirect it. Chosen. One silence is not the season you survive, it is the strategy you deploy. And when your reservoir starts to fill again, when you begin to feel something solid returning to the center of your chest, you will notice something uncomfortable. Most of your energy was never taken by circumstances. It was given away by you voluntarily to people and patterns that never earned that access. And that realization is where the next layer begins. That uncomfortable realization I mentioned, that most of your energy was not stolen but handed over. It starts here, in the mind. Because the first place you lose control is not in your relationships. It is not in your schedule. It is in what you allow to sit inside your own head, unchallenged. And right now, your mind has no gatekeeper. Think about it. You would not leave your front door open at night and let anyone walk in. You would not hand a stranger the keys to your car and say, drive wherever you want. But that is exactly what you do with your mind every single morning. Before you have made a single conscious decision about what you want to think, your mind is already occupied. Worry about money walked in. Comparison with someone on social media sat down at the table. A conversation from last week replayed itself without your permission. Fear about next month moved in and unpacked its bags. None of those thoughts were invited. They entered because there was no gate. And here is what makes this dangerous. Thoughts are not just thoughts. Thoughts are instructions. Every thought you allow to stay becomes a lens, and that lens shapes how you interpret everything that happens to you. If the thought "I am behind" is sitting in your head unchallenged, then every success you see in someone else becomes evidence of your failure. If the thought "good things never last" is living rent-free in your mind, then every blessing that arrives comes with an expiration date you invented. The thoughts you tolerate become the architecture of your perception, and your perception builds your reality one decision at a time. In 2 Corinthians 10:5, Paul writes something that most people read as spiritual poetry, but is actually a military command. We take captive every thought to make it obedient to Christ. The Greek word for take captive is aishmalotizo, and it is not gentle, it is a warfare term. It means to seize as a prisoner of war. Paul is not suggesting you politely redirect negative thoughts. He is saying you identify them, grab them by the collar, and place them where they belong. This is not positive thinking. This is mental governance. It is the difference between hoping your mind cooperates and deciding what your mind is allowed to carry. A true chosen one is not someone who thinks positive thoughts 24 hours a day. That is fantasy. A true chosen one is someone who knows which thoughts get a seat at the table and which ones get escorted to the door. You cannot control what shows up in your mind, but you have absolute authority over what stays. Your mind is a living room. Thoughts are guests. Some you invite to sit, some you politely walk out, and some you should have removed a long time ago, but you let them stay because they were familiar. So let me name 3 that need to leave today. The first, I am behind where I should be. Behind, according to whom? According to the timeline of someone you saw online who has a completely different blueprint than you. The Hebrew word moed, appointed time, means your schedule was set before your circumstances existed. You are not late. You are on a timeline that does not belong to anyone else. That thought has been lying to you. Let it go. The second, if something good happens, something bad is coming. This is scarcity disguised as wisdom. You think you are being careful, but you are actually afraid of joy. And being afraid of joy is the most sophisticated way to reject blessing, because you never say no to it directly. You just refuse to hold it with open hands. That thought is not protecting you. It is preemptively stealing what has not even arrived yet. The third, I have to do everything alone because no one will help me. That thought feels like armor, but it functions like a cage. It does not protect you, it isolates you. And isolation is where depletion breeds. There is a difference between being independent and being unreachable. One is strength. The other is a wound pretending to be a wall. Here is your assignment. For the next 24 hours, watch your mind like a guard watches a gate. When a thought enters, especially one that carries weight, ask it one question. Did I invite you, or did you break in? If you did not invite it, and it does not build you, it does not stay. You do not need to fight it. You do not need to argue with it. You just need to notice it and choose. That is governance. And governance is what separates someone who is spiritually aware from someone who is spiritually authoritative, anointed one. The first boundary you need is not with the people around you. It is with the thoughts you have allowed to live inside you for so long that you mistook them for your own voice. They are not your voice. And once you learn to hear the difference, everything you say out loud will begin to change, which is exactly where the next boundary must be drawn. You just started clearing the gate of your mind. Thoughts that broke in without permission are being noticed, now questioned, escorted out. Good. But here is what happens next. If you are not careful, you begin to rebuild on the inside, and then you open your mouth and demolish it. Because the tongue does not wait for permission from your new architecture. The tongue runs on old blueprints, and if you do not update what comes out of your mouth, it will undo what you just built in your head. Pay attention to what you say in ordinary moments, not in prayer, not in big declarations. In the mundane, unguarded minutes of your day. You tell a coworker, "I am so tired I cannot keep up." You text a friend, "Nothing ever works out for me." You mutter under your breath, "I do not know what I am doing." Those sentences feel like honesty. They feel like venting, but they are not neutral. Every word you speak about yourself is a brick, and you're either building a house or burying yourself. You cannot spend the morning governing your mind and then spend the afternoon narrating your own defeat. Proverbs 18:21 is a verse most people nod at but never actually obey. Death and life are in the power of the tongue. The Hebrew word for power there is yad, the same word used for the hand of a king, the authority of a ruler. Your tongue does not just describe your reality, it governs your reality. Not in the shallow sense of shouting "I'm wealthy" and expecting money to appear. In the structural sense, the words you repeat about yourself shape the lens through which you interpret your life, and that lens determines the decisions you make. And decisions over time build destinies. Here is a practical example. Two people lose their job on the same day. Person A says, "I got fired. I knew this would happen. Everything falls apart for me." Person B says, "That chapter is closed. Something could not shift while I was in that room. Now it can." Both are telling the truth. But the language creates different trajectories. A stays home for 3 months, paralyzed by the story their own mouth keeps reinforcing. B applies somewhere new within the week, not because B is stronger, but because B spoke a direction instead of a verdict. The event was the same, the narration was different, and narration is what the tongue controls. So here are 3 speech rules that will protect what you are building. First, do not discuss your struggle with anyone who cannot help you solve it. Venting to the wrong person is not relief. It is entertainment for them, funded by your pain. The right person hears your problem and responds with insight or action. The wrong person hears your problem and responds with gossip, pity, or their own unrelated complaints. Choose your audience before you open your mouth. Second, before you say anything about yourself, run it through one filter. Does this sentence build me or bury me? You are not required to lie, but you are allowed to choose silence over self-destruction. I do not know what I am doing can become I am figuring this out. I cannot afford it can become. That is not where I am allocating right now. Small shifts in language, massive shifts in posture. Third, replace the language of permanence with the language of motion. I always fail becomes up to now. This has been my pattern. I will never get out of this becomes I have not found the way yet. Always and never are walls. Up to now and not yet are doors, and doors can open. Your practice for the next 48 hours is this. Before every negative statement about yourself or your situation, pause for 3 seconds. In those 3 seconds, ask, is this sentence serving my future or repeating my past? If it repeats the past, swallow it. Replace it with silence or replace it with a sentence that points forward. You will be stunned by how many times a day your own mouth was working against you. When your thoughts are governed and your speech is aligned, you will notice the final leak, and it is the hardest one to address. It is the people around you, not enemies, not strangers. The people you love, the people you trust, the people who have access to parts of you that should have required clearance they never earned. Here is a truth that will cost you comfort but save you years. Not everyone who cares about you is good for you, and not everyone who has access to your life has earned it. Some people are in your inner circle not because they belong there, but because they arrived early and you never reassessed. Loyalty kept the door open. But loyalty without discernment is not faithfulness, it is negligence. And the version of you that is being built right now cannot afford to be negligent about who gets in. Let me be specific. There is someone in your life who asks how you are doing, but not because they want you to be well. They want to confirm you are still struggling. Your struggle makes them feel stable. There is someone who says, I support you, but every time you share a plan, they plant a seed of doubt dressed up as concern. Are you sure about that? I just do not want you to get hurt. That is not protection. That is control, wearing a mask of care. And there is someone whose presence drains you so consistently that you have started avoiding their calls, but you feel guilty about it because they have been around for years. These are not enemies. I need you to hear that. They are not evil. They are simply people who belong to a version of you that is expiring. They fit the old architecture, and if you drag them into the new structure without evaluating their weight, they will crack the foundation before the walls go up. Proverbs 4:23 says, Guard your heart above all else, for from it flow the springs of life. The Hebrew word for guard is natsar, and it does not mean casually protect. Natsar means to watch over the way a soldier watches a gate, the way a treasurer guards a vault. It implies something of extreme value behind the wall. Your heart, your vision, your peace, your calling. These are not casual assets. They are the infrastructure of everything God is building in you. And you have been leaving the vault door open. Let me give you a framework. Think of your life as having 3 clearance levels. The first level, your inner circle, holds 1 to 3 people maximum. These are the ones who know what you are building and are helping you build it. They do not just cheer from a distance, they hand you tools. They have earned the right to see you unfinished, to speak into your weak spots, and to hear your vision before it has evidence. This level requires trust, tested by time and truth. Most people have 5 or 6 in this circle. That is too many. Reduce it. Quality survives where quantity collapses. The second level, your community, is broader. These are people who share the journey with you in some form, but they do not get the blueprint. They know the general direction of your life, but not the daily coordinates. You can be warm, present, and genuine with them without being exposed. Not every good person deserves full access. Some relationships thrive precisely because they have a boundary holding them at the right distance. The third level, everyone else. Not opponents, not threats. Just people who see the finished product, not the process. They get your kindness, your professionalism, your respect. They do not get your fears, your unformed plans, or your 2 a.m. confessions. That is not coldness, that is stewardship. Now here is your action. Look at the 5 most recent conversations on your phone. For each person, ask one question. After talking to this person, do I have more energy or less? Do not judge them. Just measure the effect. If 3 out of 5 leave you emptier, you do not have a relationship problem. You have an access problem. The solution is not to cut people off. It is to adjust the clearance level. Less frequency, less depth, less time. You are not building a wall. You are installing a door, and you hold the key. Chosen 1-3 layers of boundary are now in place. The mind has a gate, the tongue has discipline, and the people around you have clearance levels. The energy you reclaim from these 3 layers is not small. It is the fuel for what comes next. And what comes next is not defense anymore. It is the peak. The place where inner authority stops being a concept and becomes the force that rearranges how the world responds to you. Something has been frustrating you, and you have not been able to name it until now. You have been doing the right things. You have been faithful. You have been showing up, working, praying, holding on, and the results are not matching the effort. Doors you knocked on did not open. Opportunities you were qualified for went to someone else. And the question eating at you is not whether God is real. You settled that a long time ago. The question is quieter and more painful. Am I doing something wrong that I cannot see? Let me offer you a different diagnosis. It is not your actions, it is your frequency. And by frequency, I do not mean anything mystical or abstract. I mean the internal state you carry when you act. Two people can do the exact same thing and produce completely different results, not because the action differs, but because the energy behind the action differs. And people on the receiving end feel that difference even when they cannot articulate it. They feel it in a handshake. They feel it in the tone of a voice. They feel it in the way someone walks into a room before a single word is spoken. Here is where this becomes practical. Imagine two people sitting in the same job interview, same resume, same qualifications. Person A walks in carrying the internal posture of, "Please choose me, I need this, I hope I am enough." Person B walks in carrying, "Here is what I bring, here is the value, let us see if this is the right fit." Same chair, same questions, different outcomes, and the interviewer will not be able to explain why they chose B over A. They will say gut feeling or cultural fit. But what they actually detected was frequency. Person B was not performing confidence. Person B had settled something on the inside before they walked through the door. Now bring this into finances. Two people ask for a raise in the same week. One apologizes for bringing it up, lists every reason they might not deserve it, and frames the request like a favor. The other presents the value they have created, names the number they expect, and holds silence. Same ask, radically different energy. The first person told their boss, "I am not sure I am worth this." The second person told their boss, "I already know." And the boss, without realizing it, believed whichever story was told with more conviction. That is frequency in the marketplace. It is not arrogance, it is internal settlement, knowing what you carry before the world confirms it. In Nehemiah 8:10, there is a verse that gets quoted on greeting cards, but rarely understood in its full weight. "The joy of the Lord is your strength." The word for joy in Hebrew, chedva, does not mean happiness. Happiness is a response to circumstances. Chedva means a fortified inner state. It shares a root with words that mean stronghold, citadel, an interior structure that cannot be shaken by exterior conditions. So when Nehemiah says joy is your strength, he is not saying cheer up and you will feel better. He is saying, when you cultivate an unshakable inner posture, one that is not dependent on whether the door opened or the check arrived or the person called back, you become structurally sound. And structurally sound people attract different results than structurally shaky people. Not because the universe is rewarding positivity, because stability is rare and the world trusts what is stable. This is the frequency that changes outcomes, not hype, not forced optimism, not declaring things into existence with clenched fists. A settled knowing. The posture that says I have been provided for before I knew I needed it, and I will be provided for again. That is not denial, that is history. Look at your own life. You are still here. Every crisis that was supposed to end you did not. Every season you thought you would not survive, you survived. That track record is not luck. That is evidence, and evidence is what frequency is built on. So here is your protocol. Before any significant action, a phone call, a meeting, a financial decision, a hard conversation, stop for 60 seconds. Ask yourself one question: am I about to act from the fear of losing or from the knowledge of what I carry? If the answer is fear, do not act yet. Adjust first. Remind yourself of one fixed truth, not a wish, a truth. I have been carried through worse. I am not unqualified. What I bring has value. Then act from that place. 60 seconds can change the trajectory of the entire encounter. Chosen one frequency is not a feeling, it is a foundation. And when the foundation is set, when you stop performing certainty and start carrying it, the external world begins to respond in ways that will surprise you. But there is a level above this, a frequency that most people never reach because it asks for the one thing the human mind resists most believing before the evidence shows up. And that is where true mastery lives. Every major turning point in your life followed the same pattern. You moved before you had proof. You said yes before you had the full picture. You stepped into something before anyone could guarantee the outcome. Applying for the school you were not sure you would get into. Saying, "I love you," before knowing if it would be returned. Leaving the job that was killing you before the next one was secured. In each of those moments, you practiced faith without calling it faith. You just called it, "I had no other choice." But you did have a choice. You could have stayed. You moved. And that is the muscle I am asking you to use again deliberately this time, with full awareness of what it is. In Proverbs 3:9, Scripture says, "Honor the Lord with your wealth, with the first fruits of all your crops." Most people read this and think tithing, give in money. And yes, that is one layer. But the deeper principle underneath the instruction is this: you release the first portion before you see the rest. You give when the harvest is still in the ground. You act before the evidence arrives. That is the principle of first fruits, not a transaction, a declaration. You are telling the architect of your life, "I trust that the full harvest is coming, even though all I can see right now is dirt." Now let me connect this to something you can use tomorrow. When you decide to invest in your own development, a course, a book, a mentor, a trip that expands how you think, while your finances are not yet abundant, you are living the first fruits principle. You are not investing because you are wealthy. You are investing because you believe the version of you on the other side of that investment has value. And that belief, that willingness to act on the unseen, is the hinge on which every significant door in your life has turned. Not effort, not connections, not timing alone. Faith expressed through movement. James 1:18 goes even further. He chose to give us birth through the word of truth, that we might be a kind of first fruits of all he created. Read that slowly. You are not just someone who gives first fruits. You are the first fruits. You are the initial demonstration of what God is doing in the earth, not the finished product, the first evidence. And first evidence does not need to be perfect. It needs to be real. A prototype is not judged by its polish. It is judged by its proof of concept. And your life, with all its rough edges and unfinished rooms, is proof that something is being built that the world has not seen the full version of yet. This changes how you walk into every room. You do not enter the interview as someone requesting a position. You enter as someone presenting value. You do not approach the negotiation as someone hoping for fairness. You approach as someone who already knows what they bring to the table. You do not meet opportunity with the energy of "please give me a chance." You meet it with "let me show you what I carry." That shift from applicant to offering is the first fruit's identity, and it restructures how people respond to you in ways no resume or pitch ever could. So here is your move for the next 72 hours. Identify one decision you have been delaying because you are waiting for more certainty. Name it and take the first step, not the whole staircase, just the first step. Send the email, start the draft, make the call, register, begin. The first step does not need to be perfect. It only needs to exist, because that step is a declaration that you trust what is coming more than you fear what is uncertain. Anointed One, you have reclaimed your energy. You have set boundaries in your mind, your speech, and your access. You have shifted your frequency from reaction to settlement, and now you have stepped forward before the road was fully visible. Everything up to this point has been interior, structure, foundation, rewiring. But a building that stays invisible forever serves no one, and what God has been engineering inside you was never meant to stay hidden. It was meant to step into daylight, into real decisions, real finances, real authority, real rooms where your presence changes the atmosphere. That is the final phase, and it begins with your feet in the water. In Joshua chapter 3, the Israelites are standing at the edge of the Jordan River. The promised land is on the other side. They can see it. They have waited 40 years for this moment, and they are expecting God to do what He did before part the water first, then they walk through. But God changes the sequence. He tells Joshua to instruct the priests carrying the ark to step into the river first. Feet in the water before the water moves. Not after. Before. And the people are watching, waiting, wondering if this is going to work. But God is not watching the water. He is watching the feet. The miracle was not released by faith as a concept. It was released by faith as a footstep. That is where you are right now. Everything from chapter 1 to chapter 8 happened on this side of the river. The signal, the architecture, the silence, the boundaries, mind-tongue access, the frequency shift, the first fruits faith. All of it was preparation, interior construction. And it was necessary. You cannot carry what is on the other side if you are structurally unsound on this side. But preparation without crossing is just philosophy. And you did not come this far to theorize, you came to walk. So let me name the water. The water is the place where internal transformation meets external action. It is the gap between knowing and doing. And most people stand at the edge of that gap for years, fully prepared, fully aware, fully equipped, and never step in. Not because they lack faith, because the river looks the same as it did before they were ready. The circumstances have not changed yet. The bank account has not shifted. The phone has not rung. And so they wait for the water to part first. But the water does not part for spectators. It parts for feet. Here are 4 areas where your feet need to touch water this week, not next month, not when you feel ready, this week. The first is financial, one concrete action that puts you in a posture of management instead of reaction. It does not have to be dramatic. Set up the savings account you have been postponing. Cut one subscription that has been draining money you do not notice. Sit down for 20 minutes and look at where your money actually goes, not where you think it goes. This is not about wealth yet. This is about stewardship, and stewardship is what qualifies you for increase. No architect hands someone a larger building to manage when they have not maintained the small one. The second is physical. Your body is the vehicle through which every spiritual reality operates in the material world. You can carry the most powerful anointing on earth, But if the vessel is neglected, the delivery is compromised. One adjustment this week: walk for 15 minutes a day. Replace one meal that drains your energy with one that sustains it. Sleep 30 minutes earlier than your habit. You are not optimizing a machine. You are honoring the structure God chose to house what He is building. The third is relational. There is a conversation you have been avoiding. You know which one. It might be a boundary that needs to be spoken. It might be a truth that needs to be delivered. It might be a reconciliation you've been postponing because the timing never feels right. The timing will never feel right. But you are no longer operating on emotional timing. You are operating on architectural timing. Speak from the new frequency, from settlement, not from fear. Say what needs to be said with the tone of someone who has already decided to be at peace, regardless of the response. The fourth is purposeful. One step toward the thing you know you were designed for. Not the thing the world told you to pursue, not the safe option, the real one, the one that lives in the part of your chest that tightens when you think about it too long because it matters that much. Start the project. Write the first page, send the inquiry, register for the training. You do not need the whole staircase illuminated. You need one step, and you need it before the week ends. Now let me tell you what will happen after you step in. The water will not part immediately. There will be a day, maybe two, where your feet are wet and nothing has visibly changed. This is the gap that kills most people's faith. They step in, look around, see no miracle, and step back out. But the Jordan did not part the moment the priest's toes touched the surface. It parted when they stood firm. The standing is the thing, not the stepping alone, the standing after stepping when nothing has moved yet. And this is where the difference between reaction and architecture becomes real. The reactor steps in and panics when nothing shifts. The architect steps in and holds position because the blueprint says the wall goes here regardless of what the weather looks like today. You are the architect. Your feet are in the water. Now stand. And as you stand, as you hold your ground in the ordinary, unchanged, unglamorous middle, something is about to happen that no amount of preparation could have predicted. The water will begin to move. Not because you are extraordinary, because you did not retreat when nothing confirmed you were right. You have been here since the beginning, and I need you to understand what that means, not sentimentally, structurally. The version of you that started this message is not the version hearing this now. Something has shifted. You may not feel it as thunder. You may feel it as quiet, a settling. A weight that lifted so gently you are not sure when it left. But it left. And the space it occupied is no longer empty, it is available. Available for something you could not have carried an hour ago. Let me name what happened. You recognized a signal that most people scroll past. You stopped reading your life as a tragedy and started reading it as a blueprint. You reclaimed energy that had been leaking through punctures you had stopped noticing. You set a gate at your mind, discipline at your tongue, and clearance levels around your access. You shifted from performing confidence to carrying settlement, and you stepped forward before the water parted. None of that is small, and none of it is theoretical anymore. It is in you now, not as inspiration that fades by tomorrow, but as architecture that holds weight. And here is what I want to say to you before you leave this space. You are allowed to rest without calling it laziness. You are allowed to want more without calling it greed. You are allowed to protect your energy without calling it selfishness. You're allowed to say no and leave the sentence there with no explanation trailing behind it. You're allowed to receive something good and hold it with open hands instead of bracing for the cost. You have spent years earning permission from the world. You do not need it. The blueprint was approved before you were born. Chosen one. I am not going to pray over you the way you might expect. I am not going to bind anything or declare timelines or make promises about what will appear in your bank account by Friday. What I will say is this: the one who drew the blueprint is not finished with you, and he does not need your perfection to continue building. He needs your presence. He needs you to keep showing up at the gate of your own mind, at the boundary of your own speech, at the threshold of your own life, not as a performer, but as a steward. Someone who manages what they have been given with the seriousness of someone who knows more is coming, but does not treat what is already here as insufficient. Go and check within before you check anything else, not just today as practice, as posture, as the first act of every morning before the world hands you its script. Ask yourself, where am I standing today? What frequency am I carrying? Am I building or reacting? The answer to that question will shape your day more than any notification headline or message in your inbox ever could. That is not motivation. That is mechanics. The internal determines the external. It always has. The title of this message was not clickbait. It was a principle. What you check today matters less than what you see within yourself. And now you have seen it. Not because I showed you something new, but because I named something your spirit already knew and your mind had not caught up to yet. The signal was always there. You just needed someone to confirm you were not imagining it. You were not imagining it. Now, if something in this message landed in a place that matters, leave a mark. Not for me, for you. A word in the comments, anything a stone placed at the site where something shifted. And if there is someone in your life who is standing where you were standing at the beginning of this, someone who has been checking the outside and forgetting the inside, send this to them. Not as advice, as a signal, the same kind that stopped you. And if you want to continue walking this out, there is more ahead than behind. You know where to find it. Now, go check within.